Welcome back to Panad with Mersea to Jersey for this second episode. This is a web series designed for Ynys Môn Island Games competitors and those thinking of going to future Island Games. We'll be chatting to a number of individuals who compete or have competed in sport across Wales to talk to them about their experiences. Do check out the description below for any further information and links, and also a link to the Mersea to Jersey website so you can find out just who we are and what we do. Also, do subscribe by clicking the subscribe button. And if you haven't seen the first episode with Dominic Breen-Turner, do go back and watch that. He's very passionate about the Island Games. So if you're thinking of going, he's the person to listen to. Otherwise, sit back, relax, enjoy a cuppa while you see the second episode. So joining us today is a former world champion and former world record holder. He's competed at the Winter Paralympics and also the Summer Paralympics in Beijing and in London 2012. He's most recently competed in the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast in 2018. So a huge Mersea to Jersey welcome to Nathan Stevens.
Thank you for having me, guys. Thank you for having me.
So if we could start with sort of a background on your sort of sporting career for those watching, because you've competed at sort of multiple different events throughout your career and in various different sports as well. So sort of can we start with sort of how you got into those sports?
Yeah, so it all started when I was 10 years old. So I lost my legs when I was 9, and when I was 10, I got involved in a sport called ice sledge hockey, and that kind of opened my eyes to the world of parasport, and from there I kind of got the bug, and wanted to try pretty much everything and anything I could. So when I was in school, I was swimming, doing cricket and horse riding, and everything that I could do. And when I was 13, I went along to a multi-sport event in Newport, South Wales, and got picked up by the performance manager of Disability Sport Wales, and he introduced me to athletics, and kind of realised that I was pretty good at throwing stuff about, and he just got me into shot put, javelin and discus from the age of 13. While still doing all my other sports. So I was very much a multi-sports person up until I was probably 17, 18, where I wanted to focus more on the javelin, shot put and discus. But during that time, say 2006, while very much competing for athletics and doing world champs, I qualified for, the team qualified for the Winter Paralympic Games in ice sledge hockey. So I was part of the Great Britain setup for that. So that was my first real taste of Paralympic Games, and in that multi-competition sport environment, which was it was amazing to be a part of that team, and kind of really gave me a focus when I got back to go, right, well, now I want to try and get to a Summer Paralympic Games. So after 2006, I kind of put ice sledge hockey on the back burner, and I took up athletics more of a full-time sport, and was pretty successful at it. Managed to qualify for Beijing 2008 Paralympic Games in all 3, shot put, javelin and discus. So I was the first GB athlete to do so, and managed to narrowly miss out on a medal of my javelin and finishing 4th by 30 centimetres, which was hard to swallow, but also a fantastic experience to be the youngest in the field in my event and to narrowly miss out on a medal. So coming back from Beijing, he was just like, right, let's aim for the next one. Let's aim for some major championships and focus on winning medals higher up. And 2011, I came back as from the World Championships as world champion and championship record holder. Later on that year, I managed to break the world record and was world record holder for a short period of time going into London 2012. But unfortunately, the year of London 2012, I suffered quite a serious shoulder injury, but managed to get myself up into fitness to qualify for London 2012 and compete at the games. Didn't go to plan, but I was there, and I can say that I competed at home games and absolutely loved it. So the home crowd was phenomenal, and the experience itself, having a Paralympic Games in Britain, was amazing. And then after that, I retired from athletics in 2014. Started working with Disability Sport Wales on their performance pathway to try and get more youngsters involved in sport. And during that process, I kind of talent transferred myself out of retirement into powerlifting. I managed to compete in the 2018 Commonwealth Games for Welsh weightlifting. So I've done lots of different sports at high levels, and I just want to try to pass on my knowledge and experience to the youngsters that we have in the pathway, and show them you can transfer between sports and succeed at many sports. It's just about giving yourselves the opportunities and that patience to do so.
That's amazing. That's quite a wide range of sport and events that you've done there.
I'm just stubborn.
Yeah, just can't give up. So I think we've seen from effectively your sporting CV that you, with the ice sledge hockey team, you first went out to represent your country, I believe at the age of 16. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was that like as a teenager, being 16 years old and traveling and being part of, a much bigger team event? How was your mentality approaching that, and what difference have you seen now that you're older and perhaps wiser going into international tournament?
I was extremely cocksure of myself, going in thinking, I'm the youngest in the team, I'm good. And then when I came across the Canadians and the Norwegians, who were twice my size and built like brick houses, it kind of put me in my place quite quickly, and a real humbling experience. But to be in that team environment, to be able to bounce off and learn from my elder counterparts, the team, was a huge learning experience for me. And I was able to transfer that then into a lot of the other sports that I did, just making sure that you don't take anything for granted. Every competition is different, every opponent is different. You never know what the opponents are doing behind you. And even when I was world champion, don't become complacent in your training and everything that you do, because there's always a youngster coming up behind you to take that title off you. You need to keep on experimenting with your training, keep on having fresh ideas in your head to stay one step ahead of the game. But having that team behind me in Turin was amazing. It's not a lonely environment, where when I was training for an individual sport, you can have moments where you don't have anybody to pick you up. I trained on my own quite a lot. If my coach was away with other competitors, and having that individual motivation and drive was massive for me. It helped that I loved the sport that I did, so it gave me that passion to go out and throw javelin in the rain and travel distances around Britain to try and get selection and distances and things like that. So both experiences just made me appreciate sport so much more when you have that team around you and being able to bounce off you. And as I got older, I kind of created my own team around me from individual sport. So I had my strength and conditioning coaches, my training partners and my peers, and I tried to instill in the youngsters that I was kind of above then. We had quite a lot of youngsters coming through the pathway, and try to instill that team mentality in individual sports players, so they don't feel alone, so that they can kind of have someone to talk to when they're having trouble in time. And that's something that we're trying to build now in the whole pathway element of the job, of the work that I'm doing.
So you were talking about the sort of the lonely nature of the individual sport and everything. What was it like then going to, say, the Paralympics and the Commonwealth Games, where you're actually then part of a bigger team like Wales or GB, and you've got all these athletes around you competing in a variety of different sports? How does that sort of work? How did you find those sort of situations?
Beijing was amazing again. So it was seeing individuals in their absolute elite environment. This is their pinnacle of their career, and just seeing how they work and take over. And again, some athletes are very selfish in their environments, and they have to be, because they're there to ultimately perform for themselves. Especially in individual sports like athletics, people kind of go into them silos and lock themselves away and go and train on their own and everything else like that. And for me, coming from that team environment was really difficult to adjust to. And I wanted to be everybody's friends. And what are you doing today? What's your training like today? Or when are you competing? And sometimes you can just come across against a brick wall where they're just like, I'm in my zone, leave me to it. And I say I was 20 going into Beijing, but still quite a young athlete then. Say I'd done the Paralympic Games before, but this is a completely different environment. You know, Turin, we weren't funded athletes. We all were out there. We were self-funded. It wasn't our job as an ice sledge hockey player then. But when you went into this really elite environment where these athletes were getting paid to do their sport, you can kind of see the different nuances in how they react to different situations. And as a youngster going into that environment, it was quite daunting and scary almost. My parents weren't out there with me. My coach wasn't allowed in that environment with me. Say he was on the outset, so I had to rely on a lot of the GB coaches to run and deliver my sessions. And it made me into a more independent athlete. I didn't rely on coming out of Beijing. I had quite a lot of lessons that I had to learn and become more resilient and more independent in my style of coaching and session planning and training, which again I think benefited me getting older within the sport. But yeah, it was different, but again, still amazing and still loved it. So
you quite often see in sort of events like the Olympics and Commonwealth Games that, you know, one gold medal from somebody in a team, say Gareth Evans winning gold in the weightlifting in 2018 Commonwealth Games, and then suddenly you get other members of the team suddenly pick up their game and sort of medals start and performances start improving throughout sort of the rest of the week and things. Do you find that was quite obvious?
Commonwealth Games was a different experience again. I think competing for GB is great, but you're not allowed to wear that dragon on your shirt. And being able to do that in a Commonwealth Games was amazing. So you come together as a team so much more because you're competing for the pride of Wales.
Yeah.
As much as you want to try and do that in a Paralympic Games and be a proud Welshman or a Welsh woman to compete, you're still ultimately under that GB umbrella. You know, I've had friends who've got told off for wearing Welsh socks in a Paralympic Games and showing them to the camera afterwards, and they were as lucky Welsh socks. So yeah, that home nation kind of pride gets lost in a Paralympic Games. But Commonwealth Games, yeah, when Gareth won that first medal, I was in the venue when he did it, and yeah, so it was amazing. And when you got back to the village, it was shared amongst all the sports because we were all in one block. And again, from a Paralympic to a non-Paralympic environment, to have that, to be able to share that moment with the Olympians as well as the Paralympians. You know, it was the first time I ate in a hall with the likes of Tom Daley and Usain Bolt and some of them, you know, huge athletes that you see and look up to. But yeah, it resonates around the whole team, especially on that Welsh level. Then when you get to a Commonwealth Games, and more so, I think in an athletics environment, probably the only time that I'd felt that team cohesion was actually when I won the World Championships in 2011. Our head coach was very much, say, he was a Canadian guy and wanted us all to be a team. So if you had days off, you were down the track supporting. Obviously, if you had time off before your event, and as soon as you'd finished competing, you were down the track supporting. And it was quite a young side in the World Championships. We had quite a lot of new individuals into the sport, and for them, it was a really fun environment to start looking up to their peers and getting mentored by the athletes who were the winning medals. You know, your Dave Weirs, your Hannah Cockcrofts, your Ali Davises, and myself to kind of help the younger generation come through. It was was a really humbling experience to be a part of.
One of the things you touched upon there is about the whole, representing the dragon, and also the difference in competing in a home games compared to, one that's overseas. We've got the next Island Games is in Guernsey, so for our Ynys Môn athletes, they'll be traveling there, and they won't have necessarily the family, friends, and all that kind of stuff that's going to be going on. But 2025, the island is going to be hosting this international sporting event for the first time in full. What difference do you think that's going to make, and at what point do you start setting your kind of sporting vision on that year in order to get yourself in the best place?
It brings its own pressures, because you will be flying the flag for Ynys Môn and the island, and but again, to have close family and friends around, it kind of spurs you on a little bit. So it's how you deal with that pressure. You can either rise to it and think, yeah, I'm going to do it for my home country, or you can just go, oh God, if I fail, what I'm going to let everybody down. So you need to be able to turn it on its head to go, yeah, we're a proud nation. We're doing it for Wales. We're doing it for Ynys Môn, and really rise up to the challenge. And I think in preparation for it, so as soon as the Guernsey Games is done, that's when you start switching on to go, right, the next Games is ready for it. Start the process now. Start thinking about how you're going to deal with the crowds, how you're going to deal with the added pressure, and use Guernsey as a little mental prep and warm up towards it. Because ultimately you still be doing exactly the same event. You're still training as hard as ever to get that success. It's just going to be in a different venue and luckily in your back garden. So you've got that advantage to go, this is where I train, this is where I compete day in, day out. I know what the weather's like, I know what could potentially be around the corner, and use them little nuances in the environment to your advantage.
You touched upon earlier about the whole, it's certainly in the early days, you had to do fundraising in order to go and compete. And obviously you've competed across the world a lot further than the Island Games kind of community goes. How did you kind of go about that? And did it kind of add to it a little bit more? Did it make it feel a bit more of a kind of a group effort and make it more special?
Yeah, definitely. For the ice hockey guys, we did as much as we could. We did sat out supermarkets, shaking buckets to try and get as much funding as we can. We approached several businesses to go, look, this is our one opportunity to compete in the Winter Paralympic Games. Because it's, even as I was young, and luckily my parents were very, very involved in traveling back up and forth for GP training. Say the sessions were based up in Hull on a Sunday evening. And again, my parents were adamant that if I didn't wake up for school the next morning, I wouldn't be going. So they kind of put the pressure on me to go, if I want to do this, there's this sacrifices that have to be made. I can school, it's fine. I always go back to the class, put up my sleep there. But yeah, when that achievement is made, you have so much more ownership over it. You feel a lot, as a team, it kind of really gelled us because we did it together. We everything that we had was literally blood, sweat and tears of the whole team, the coaching staff, the support. We all had our own, buy-in into that process. And we were just thankful to be there. Even when we got absolutely demolished by Canada, I think it was 18-0 in the games, we still finished that match with a smile on our face because we knew we were with the least ranked team there. But the challenges that we faced to get to to touring was a hard fought battle from us all. We all sacrificed a lot to get there.
Also, going into your current job, you work for Sports Wales, so it's quite clear that, you know, sport has been a massive impact on your life through sort of your competitiveness, but also now going on to the future. So what do you actually do with sport, sort of disability, Sport Wales?
Yeah, so I'm one of two senior performance pathway officers. So myself and my colleague Gemma, we're currently creating a longevity plan then for our athletes. So we've it's difficult at this current climate, but we've set up virtual performance pathway hubs where we've got 40 athletes involved across multi different sports. And we're just trying to gear them up for that long haul, giving them the tools that they need to kind of become a professional full-time athlete. So we got our youngest, I think, is 8 years old, wanting to do athletics. So we profile them and we ensure that the events that they are doing have that Paralympic pathway element to it.
I presume, you know, you having been through that process since you were sort of 15, 16, it's sort of fantastic sort of experience to use in the job to help all those sort of the next generation, really.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to be able to provide them opportunities to others that I had growing up. And yeah, to hopefully pass on some of my knowledge and some of my mistakes that they can learn from and develop. So yeah, it's an amazing to you know, we've had some youngsters who have, you know, lost their legs through serious illnesses and have been in extremely dark places, but to share my story and to share other athletes' stories, so like there's still life out there, there's still sport available to you. And even for athletes who we get later on in their journey, so we're working with a few rugby players who have been injured in their sport and thought that sport was over for them. But now to go, well, actually, no, it's not. There's still parasport available to you, and you can still get to Paralympic Games and still succeed at an extremely high level. And say that them journeys as well, which is really exciting to share and be a part of. So.
If you could say, what's your champagne moment from your sporting career? It doesn't necessarily need to be, you know, because obviously you've spoken about the fact that, you know, you've been a world champion, you've had a world record, you've had your home games. There's a heck of a lot that you've had, but what's your personal champagne moment?
If I would probably pick one, it'd probably be right back to my first ever British champs, that I was a complete underdog, didn't know, you know, how to really be an athlete. And I came back, say I was 14, 15, I think I was, my first ever British senior champs, and came back with 3 gold medals and 3 British championship records. And it kind of dawned on me then that actually I think I could do this for quite a while. I think it kind of settled in then that I wasn't just a mediocre thrower. I actually had some talent in that sport that enabled me to kind of really get my teeth stuck into and run with it, and so to speak. And yeah, if it wasn't that, it would have been Beijing and narrowly missing out on a bronze medal. It kind of cemented the fact that, yeah, you know, even though I didn't win a medal, there's still scope for me here to go off and do so. So, yeah.
Amazing.
I think finally it'd be good if you got sort of one piece of advice you could give those heading to Guernsey in a year. So for a year out, what advice you could give, especially after the last sort of 3.5 months, which have been quite difficult for everybody really, but especially for people who are trying to train for a competition. Yeah, what advice could you give the year out?
Enjoy the process. I know it's a difficult time to still continue training at the minute, but whenever they get back into their first ever training session, whether it be on a track or in a pool or on a pitch, just appreciate that moment. As soon as you step back onto that field, you kind of realize what it's all for. And when you walk out into, you know, if they take part in the opening ceremony and fly that flag, just embrace it and really enjoy it. Because it's one thing that I always did, I always told myself is that if I didn't enjoy it anymore, I wouldn't do it. Because it makes all the tough times, and God, this is probably one of the toughest times for all the athletes wanting to compete in the games at the moment. But it just makes you realise how much you actually really wanted to get, and why you put in all the hours, why you sacrifice birthdays, holidays to train and wake up on them glum, windy, wet mornings to go off and do the sport that you love. And people think that you're stupid and you're bonkers, but you do it because you love it and you enjoy it. And make sure that feeling, resonates with you when you go out to the games, and just be proud and fly the flag for Wales.
I think we could probably talk all day about sport and your experiences, but I think tea break's probably over now. So a huge thank you very much for joining us and giving sort of Ynys Môn competitors sort of your experience and advice. It's greatly appreciated.
No, and say good luck to everybody competing, and say when it's up in Ynys Môn in 2025, I'll be sure to come up and cheer you all on. So